we'll make you feel alright. If you got a tummy ache, or you don't feel right, or if you have a nasty rash, keeping you up at night, don't worry about a thing.
Don't worry.
'Cause Atticus Health will make you feel alright.
I'm Ilana Razbash, and this is Radio Architecture. Good evening from beautiful Bunurong country. We are broadcasting to you live from the unceded lands of the Eastern Kulin Nation, from right here in the ancient Karam swamp. As always, you can text us on the studio line and join the conversation. The number is 0493 213 831. We would love to have you with us. My guest and conversation partner this evening is artist Yvette Coppersmith. Her painting practice originally formed through portraiture in the realistic tradition. With over the last 20 years, her visual language has developed and evolved to include still life, abstraction, and landscape, with an interest in the interplay between these genres and figure. Coppersmith's representations of self evolved through the process of her medium and stylistic transformations, utilising the traditions of Australian and European modernism as a vehicle to imagine her own subjectivity, as well as the people she paints, depicting predominantly women in her portraits. The artist explores the contemporary female gaze and the body, while simultaneously illuminating potent social, cultural and environmental issues. In contrast, her abstract works reclaim signature elements from key practices within 20th century Australian modernism, engaging with emotive rhythmic compositions and colour orchestrations that evoke the spiritual strands of transcendental painting. In 2018, Coppersmith was awarded the Archibald Prize for her painting Self-Portrait after George Lambert. This was the 5th year being included as a finalist, and she was the 10th woman to win the prize. The making of a 2017 Archibald portrait of Emeritus Professor Gillian Triggs featured in Foxtel's arts documentary film The Archibald by Mint Pictures. As a Melbourne-based artist, Coppersmith graduated from the Victorian College of the Arts in 2021. She won the inaugural Metro Prize in 2003 and was previously been selected as a finalist in the Darling Portrait Prize at the National Portrait Gallery in Canberra, Arthur Guy Memorial Award, Bendigo Art Gallery Victoria, and Geelong Contemporary Art Prize, Geelong Gallery Victoria, and the Portuguese Memorial Award at S.H. Irvine Gallery, Sydney. Coppersmith has exhibited her work in Melbourne, across Australia, and most recently at Art Basel, Hong Kong. Her work is held in numerous public and private collections represented by Sullivan's Trump. Her current show in Melbourne is open until the 25th of October, and I can't wait to get stuck into that conversation. And I think a little correction there from me on the reading. You graduated from 2001 at the VCA. Yvette, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such an honour to have you on.
Aww.
I just can't wait to talk about your work and the new show that's happening that has really just opened. I was so lucky to recently see as well. But before we get stuck into all that and your current practice, I want to go back to the beginning and see if you can recall the earliest memory of a building or place.
I have an early memory. I don't know if it is the earliest, but it's pretty funny. So it must be early because I was in a bassinet.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember being put in the sunroom, which was at the back of my grandparents' house, so my mum's parents, in a bassinet on the floor in the sunroom. Wow. I must have been having a sleep. I don't know. And then my grandparents had some friends pop in. And, of course, they wanted to have a look at me. And I was not in the mood for that. And so I was waving, no, paparazzi, no. Don't go away. Don't look at me.
Get out of my way.
Yeah.
And you must have been a baby then.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So I I have a couple of like early memories like that. But yeah, that's the one that's best for radio.
You were the fourth guest in 108 conversations to remember themselves as an infant. And the other three have all been artists as well. I'm just realising that now.
Yeah, I don't know how old I was, but I must have been small enough to put in a little basket.
In a tiny bassinet. And do you remember more about the sunroom?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a clear memory of the summer because they like lived there forever. So it's like probably embellished with my adult memories. But yeah. So yeah, those poor friends of my grandparents got like this rude, tiny child. Like, don't just leave me alone. And I think it's interesting because that is still part of my personality in a really strong way where I'm like, I just need time to myself. Like, go away. There's this duality of you as an artist. It's you have to be able to be looked at, whether it's you as a person or as putting something of yourself in your work to be looked at. But then I have this other side that's incredibly private, and I want to be a hermit sometimes where I'm just like, don't want to talk to people, don't want to see anyone, especially after a show. I need to hibernate for a bit. So you've got me out of hibernation to come on the radio.
We're very fortunate listeners to have Yvette here with us in the studio. And it's so essential to the creative process, right? To nurture something in your inner soul that allows that creativity to continue.
Yes, there's that, but there's different kinds of being in solitude, very different kinds. And when you're preparing for a show or for a deadline, you don't have the choice. You have to keep making the work. So sometimes you want to go to the beach, but you don't have the time, or you want to go out and see people, but you just don't have that time. But then when you've finished all that efforting, then you're like, okay, now leave me alone. Like, I've put so much energy out, I just don't want to give any more out. And maybe as an introvert, that means social interaction. And of course there are times social interaction fills your cup, but there are times when you're like, I'm so depleted, I just want to be with myself, and that's it.
Completely.
Yeah.
What's your advice to younger artists who are perhaps struggling to navigate the dichotomy?
I guess to realize that as an artist, you are building a lifelong relationship with yourself, and it's the most enduring relationship you'll ever have. And we're constantly thinking that what we see on social media is how we should be doing it. But I actually feel like you're getting a skewed perception of what humanity really is, because there are only extroverts on social media who want to show their lives. The introverts are doing really interesting things for themselves alone, and we're not putting it on social media. And that is just as valuable and rich, the things that the quiet moments, and not to compare yourself to the extrovert lifestyle that you see. You're not losing, you're actually winning. To be able to be with yourself through the ups and downs of your creative process and learn ways to anchor yourself, to give yourself the right inner guidance of what to do next, and to also build your sense of judgment about what should leave the studio, what shouldn't leave the studio, what's not finished, like that kind of inner resourcefulness to be the best judge of your work. Yeah, that's what you're building in your relationship, as well as how to care for yourself through the ups and downs of your energy.
That is essential for all artists, right? All creatives.
Yeah.
And designers and makers. Really nurture that inner quietness and be okay with boredom sometimes and stillness sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's not enough of that. And I'm grateful I grew up with that childhood that didn't have screens in the way that we do now.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm so, so grateful. I think a lot of adults say that.
Did you grow up with painting and drawing and all, being creative as a child, as a hobby at first?
Oh, absolutely. I think the things that I do now are very much have come from the things that I loved to do as a kid. So for me, drawing was one of those escapist things. So if I was homesick from school, I remember just being like in bed and being like, oh, I feel terrible. And then be like, okay, I'll get my sketchbook out. And then it would just soothe me, and like the hours would pass, and it was very sort of therapeutic and just to draw. But again, like if I needed a break from my homework that was like doing my head in, like maths homework or something that was kind of painful, I would sit and draw, or I'd play around with jewellery and like rearrange beads or whatever. And that I'd just do it at my desk and be just like, oh, good. And then I would also put pictures up that I drew. So I was drawing a lot of figures in costumes that I would just make up, and faces, mostly women's faces, a couple of strange characters that were male, but mostly they were women's faces. And I would have them on paper, put them up, stick them up on my wardrobe doors and my front and the door to my bedroom. And then every so often I would do a rehang
of the salon.
yeah. Take everything off, take all the objects off the shelves in my bedroom and just like dust and like redo it. And it's like, that was in my childhood. I do that now as an adult, and it is the best feeling. It's like you've had a holiday because you're in a new space, like, like
how you set up your
afresh.
space is everything, right? How you curate the world around you is so important.
Yes. Yeah.
Love it. Do you find the rules you have for inside your studio differ to the rest of your home in your life? Or
the studio is in the house?
No,
what do you mean?
No, I know you have work from a home studio. I mean, in terms of the hanging and the way you order and arrange your studio and your workspace, your creative space. Is that similar to how you live, or would you have a different approach?
Oh, no, it's a bit different. Like the studio, I mean, there are double doors off the living room that go straight into the studio. Originally, that was meant to be the lounge room, but I've put the couch in the kitchen, and I hardly sit on it anyway. So, I think the studio, I don't really hang pictures in the studio. Like I've just got some shelves and I've just like a bunch of materials. And when there's a show building up, it's just kind of like things are stacked up against like the window and the wall and wherever there's space. And but in the house, I think what I always do is like I will hang a picture if there's space. You know what? I would love more wall space to do this, because I will test if something is working, if I can live with it in my house.
Because you have to love it yourself.
Yeah.
Before you release it out into the world.
Yeah. And I would love to have more time to test everything. But some things I don't even have like the wall space. Like some of the really large books, I don't have anywhere to hang it. It's a small house. It's adequate, and I like how contained it is because it's really cozy and it's low maintenance. But it's and also like my lifestyle is like very focused on the studio. But yeah, I think more studio space, more wall space, but probably is it ever enough for anyone? Because
there's never enough walls for art.
Right. Like you just keep buying more art or making more art. So yeah, you're always going to have that.
Do you have a long corridor in your home? Because in seeing your current show, I said to myself, I really hope your collectors have a nice long corridor to hang your work at the end of, because I noticed this spatial paradigm where you're standing from far away and it is fully in focus and the image is sharp and crisp and you can see the figure, you see the cliffs. Some of us Bayside locals will exactly recognise the location as well. And as you approach, the pixelation begins and we start to encounter the texture in your beautiful work and the beautiful depth in the layering of your medium.
I don't have that set up, but I assume there are people that do that have works hanging. Yeah.
Here's a hot radio architecture tip for any of your collectors who might be listening. If you can hang it at the end of a corridor and see how the experience is with the work, to approach it back and forth.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That was my thought on a beautiful position there in the work.
Yeah.
And you also studied at the VCA high school?
No, I didn't go to the high school.
Straight to the university?
Yeah. I did year 12 at Sandringham Secondary College.
And then that is such a creative program as well, so good for artistic nurturing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, I went there. I don't know what it's like now. I can't speak to that. But the teachers I had were amazing. They were like angels that gave me this skill set, and they were nurturing. And like my painting teacher and my drawing teacher, I am so, so grateful for them being in my life at that time. And then when I got to VCA, and also I was like incredibly dedicated and committed and hardworking. But then when I got to VCA, I had a skill set that I could develop that not everyone had that skill set to begin with.
Yes.
And they don't teach it to you. So I was able to like then build more on, you know, learning from talking to different people. But there wasn't sort of a formal program in how to paint in realism. I did develop that very early, but I think I was always drawn to the figure and realism. And then my teachers helped to shape the direction of like the technique in that year 11 and 12. A lot blossomed in my technique. I wasn't a child prodigy. I loved art as a kid, and it was always my best subject, easy. But I wasn't like a child prodigy. My mum didn't know like that I was that good at art. You know, like she's like, oh, I had no idea, you know. But yeah, I kind of was, I committed to the direction that I was going at the end of year 10. So just before year 11. So I was 16. And then I painted my first self-portrait in oils when I was 17. And that I haven't stopped painting in oils or self-portraits since I was 17. So it's like 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long, very, very solid relationship to have with a practice. Yeah. And also when you're in year 11, you're like, I can't even imagine how my future self is going to be. But yeah, it's nice to be at this point and looking back.
That's the beauty also in the self-portrait. It's capturing the now, capturing the present, and giving that person in that moment the time and the dignity.
Yeah. And it's like it is that person, but it's also not that person. Like you're just using some references of yourself and ideas to create an image, but it's not necessarily you. I don't think you can really do a whole you in a picture, really.
You can never see yourself either, can you? The same way everybody else sees you. It's a mirror is a reflection, just as a microphone is.
And also, like, what is the self? Like, I'm just like, the more I paint pictures of people, the more I'm just like, yeah, it's a nice picture and it depicts something of that person's physicality. I never had the feeling that it was the self from an experienced perspective, which always to me felt so much more amorphous. That you had to find a visual language to depict something about that self, but you're not the physical depiction. Like, it's kind of, I feel like being alive is all dress ups. It's all like we have this physical thing and we're like creating a character with it, whether we're trying to make an artwork or not in our daily life. It's like all characters. And I don't know, I think the more that I've played with creating different characters in my self-portraits, the more I'm like, I'm not really any of them. But it's fun to expand on what your day-to-day sense of self is, because I think often you have this feeling of, this is what works when I go into public spaces and when I have social interactions. But when you're alone in the studio, you get to let that all slip away and become something else and like really expand on that, maybe perhaps limited persona.
Yes.
Because you develop these things out of like survival mechanisms of what is your persona and what is expected of you and how and what makes other people feel safe, what makes you feel safe. Honestly, that is so much. And like just to like, I mean, that's why people love putting on drag. It's like freedom, it's liberating, it's all these things. And so like for me, creating all these different people in different paintings and different costumes and stuff is just like, free. Like it's not as tiny a scope as the day-to-day.
And the most amazing thing is you're keeping that joy and that performance and that play of the childhood dress up. And you're doing in your practice and you're continuing this world building. That current show on at Sullivan's Strand, Volley à Fond, is amazing because not only are you showing paintings, you're working with Nadine Trista, you've got jewellery, there's hanging, there's a tapestry, a Super 8 film, poetry that's been recorded.
Yeah.
This is a whole universe. Say more.
Yeah, so this show's been percolating, I suppose. It's been building from like seeds of various influences for like 2-3 years. One of the key influences, I would go every time I went to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, I would watch this silent film that I think was on Super 8. It was on film, and it was from the 20s or 30s, and by Ewan Murray Will. And he was not a professional filmmaker, but he was Sydney-based and a dermatologist. Somehow he befriended the Belarus dancers, and they became like family to him, and they would stay with him. And he had a beach house. So they would go to the beach, and he made these little video films of them performing in slow motion. And they were like playfully doing ballet on the beach. And sometimes like little parts of their choreography or whatever, there was like little narratives, and sometimes, but the one I saw, it was just gorgeous. And you've got these beautiful dancers in their bathing suits on the beach. And it's like so elegant and romantic, but also very Australian and playful. So that for me was like mesmerizing as an influence. Then there was also another influence of Pierre Puvis de Chavannes, French painter from the 20th century? Or was it 19th century? Anyway, I haven't got the dates in my head. I sound vague but you know, you look at things and then you forget. This is what happened on my Year 12 art exam. Anyway, and then the other influence, I mean, there were so many. But those were the two things. I was like, okay, cool. I want to do something at the beach. I was also getting really interested and obsessed by Sandringham, of how you could look at those cliffs and feel you could be overseas.
Truly.
How Mediterranean it looks. I was then thinking about, okay, so we're doing like dance. Then I started to think I wanted to maybe bring a Greek myth, into be a narrative framework. And then I was looking at a myth in relation, and also like I had been thinking about casting for like since the start of 2023.
Yes.
Like 2 years
That
before.
twig is remarkable.
Oh, my wig.
No, the twig.
Oh, the twig.
The
branch.
The big branch that's cast in bronze.
Yes.
Is just remarkable. You have to catch yourself that it's not a real branch.
It was, and I cut it off a tree that was dead. But and I had it. I sawed it off the tree myself. It was in Eltham, and it was beautiful. But yeah, I think it's really hard to talk about this show in a way, because there was just so many layers of things coming together, but over quite a long time. So I was looking at myth, and then I looked at Orpheus and Eurydice, and I realized that myth meant that I would be creating a character for myself that was essentially, for the most part, a ghost that got stuck in the underworld. I'm like, okay, look, that's just probably not the right energy for me to...
It's a bit heavy.
It's heavy, and that pushed me, and I don't know what popped in. I must have been researching, and I was like, oh, Circe. And this character of Circe then gives me so much scope. So Circe is a goddess sorceress that was exiled onto the island of Aiaia by her parents or her father. So she was exiled from her family, the Titans, because she turned Scylla into a monster, because she had a crush on Glaucus, but then Glaucus liked Scylla, who was a nymph, and she was there was female rivalry. So she used her spell, and at that point she didn't know her powers even, turned Scylla into this hideous multi-headed beast monster that lived in the sea and ate sailors off ships that would go past. So she was exiled for this behaviour to this beautiful island. She had time to herself to weave her tapestries, to sing while she was weaving, to gather her herbs and make her spells and all of this. And then she had a visit from different people. Some of the people would come by ship and like explore the island and find her, and she'd like feed them, whatever. And if they weren't nice to her, she'd turn them into pigs or swine, as it says in the myth. And then Odysseus's ship lands and his men go up to find out what's on the island, and she turns them into swine. And then he gets word of what's happened, because there was one that, so he's, back on the ship. And then on the way, Hermes tells him, you need to take this magic thing, Molly, which will protect you from her potion. So he is protected, and when she tries to give him the magic potion, she's like, what's going on? And yes, so they end up, he stays for a year, they become lovers for a year. And there was Homer's myth, but then there was a retelling of that, Madeline Miller, which is a contemporary writer. And I read that, and it's really much more situating the myth from the perspective of Circe. And then I've taken that myth and gone, okay, but I want to do it through the lens of what if it was shown as a early 20th century silent film actress in a slightly comic way? How would we show this myth? So I've really tried to do a mashup that gives me as a performer everything I want.
Yes.
Have I put that in a nutshell well enough?
I loved your retelling. And when you watch this film, when you come into the gallery, listeners, you must go see the show if you're in Melbourne or travelling through Melbourne. You watch the film, you're having so much fun embodying the character, enjoying the character, playing with the textiles, the setting, the beach location, the cliffs, the place that you're representing. And for me as a viewer, also as a Melburnian, it's a place that I know and love very well.
Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of people, well, you live near the beach there,
Yes.
but a lot of people probably don't know exactly where it is. And I didn't know where that little spot was. There's a little cove at one end, so not the massive cliffs, but there's
The secret cove.
The secret cove, and it looks like an amphitheatre. It's very theatrical. Really reminded me of the Pierre Puvis de Chavannes paintings. And so the first, I worked with filmmaker Cara Mand, and she works with Super 8. So while you're shooting, you can't see what you're doing until it gets processed, and then the digitized files come back to you. Wow. So we did some shots, a shoot, just the two of us in summer. And I cast the Odysseus, who is Zachary Frankel, Odysseus' men, which is Ryan Abramovich, and Josh Rubin, and the nymph, who's Carlotta Chiavaza. I hope I've pronounced her name right. I just call her Cece. Anyway, and yeah, so we came back. We actually filmed that in winter, but we were so fortunate that meant no one was on the beach. And then at some point, the sun shone on a grey day. We had this golden sun, which saved the whole film. It was like magic. And
could have thought it was summer.
Yeah. And there was just like no one around. But yeah, it had a bit of a chill. But then, and then I've worked with jeweler Nadine Treister. So instead of traditionally framing the paintings, I should say that I was a bit nervous because I haven't used this technique before, but from the film, I went through and picked out shots that would work as paintings. So I've used film stills. Yeah. So when you're in the show, you're looking at the film and then you see, oh, there's that scene that is that painting.
Yes.
And so then with, instead of framing it, I've worked with a jeweler very closely designing pendants that hang like little weights on each end of the bottom of the painting. And they're based on like molds of seashells and amphora, which are like little vessels, and we've inlaid moonstone, and they're cast in brass, and there's like glass beads. And then the other thing that amazingly happened, so originally when I was like in my mind imagining the show before I even had the myth, I was like, I want it to be like a landscape, like at the beach, but I really want it to look like tapestry. Now, for me, that's kind of like, okay, cool, I'll make paintings that look like tapestry, and that's something I've been doing the last few years.
Oil with sand on jute.
Yeah, and layered, and it sort of builds up this texture that's very sort of fabric-like, yes. Like it's woven, especially with the abstractions. Anyway, then the Australian Tapestry Workshop contacted me because they were like, oh, we were thinking of who would work to weave, and your work would really lend itself. So at the first meeting, I said to the director, Sophie Travers, well, maybe we could do something for my show, and this is what I'm doing. So we've actually got the tapestry that I designed, they wove, then we've filmed as though Circe is weaving it in the films. She's at the tapestry workshop weaving it as though that's her own weaving. And then I did a painting of Circe weaving the tapestry, which is hanging next to the actual tapestry.
And that's described in the poem.
And then the poem, I worked with a woman who's an academic and a Yiddish poet, Hinda Burston, who I've known for years, and commissioned her to work speaking to the themes of the show as I was making the show. So I was like showing her little film clips and little bits of the paintings. And so she was responding to that. And I think what's come out of that poem is this. Well, first of all, it's an absolute treat having learnt Yiddish as a child, and some of my earliest performances were like in school Yiddish plays. So like there was so much joy in that. But then to have a Yiddish poem that actually is tailored for my creative practice is so special. And yeah, interestingly, she really, I think, got the sense that the film really doesn't showcase like this big magical like romance between Odysseus and Circe. It's not even so much about that. It's about Circe's just enjoyment of her own lived experience on that island. The air on her skin, the waves, the sand on her feet, her enjoyment of the weaving.
The grapes.
Eating the grapes. Yeah, all of that. So it's kind of taking the myth and in a very like new direction as well, which I think these things keep the myth alive. And I think that painting historically was so much based on storytelling and myth, and artists would choose stories that would then give them the framework to paint what actually they wanted to paint. And that's kind of exactly what I've done. So I haven't tried to even tell a whole story in a painting. The film gives you more of a narrative background, but then the paintings are just moments in time from the film that are really about serenity, peace, being, transported to a place that exists but doesn't really exist, because it's a psychological space as well as an actual space.
Absolutely. And then you bring us as the audience into that space too, because of all the world building.
Yeah.
And in the film, you've been the creative director as well, and the costumes, and it's almost a multidisciplinary show to the extent that you've taken your art and your performance. And it's also beautiful in this conversation that's come full circle, because listeners will know Sophie Travers and Nadine Treestott were past guests on this program.
No way. Oh, and Nadine was. I didn't know Sophie was.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Particularly speaking about the Australian Tapestry Workshop's prize for architects. So
wow,
an amazing thread, an amazing connection. And listeners will think, well, why have you got an artist on? You have all these different people on the show, Ilana. It's because architecture is everything. Everything becomes architecture. And art and painting, and the relationship of living with art and painting in your home, is also in fundamental relationship with architecture.
Yeah. Yeah. And also that kind of like how it changes your experience of your world. And one of the things that I designed to be that with the jewellery was that, yes, it adorns the painting, but it can also be wearable. So you can have the painting in your home and then go out for the day, take the pendant off the hook at the bottom of the painting, thread it onto this satin cord, wear it, and it's like a talisman that connects you to your home, your painting, your own environment. So when you're out in the world, you've got that kind of physical connection to a space and also an imaginary space.
Like a key. It's almost like a key. I imagine they have quite a nice weight to them.
They do.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
And they come as there's a two. There's one in each corner.
Yes.
So should a couple be one of your collectors, they can wear one each.
Exactly.
And go out and about.
Yeah.
Separate at different ends of the party, but they both have the talisman.
Yeah, and I think, I was wanting to bring into my practice the things that I spend a lot of time looking at and the things that I love and bring me joy. And I think it's like, okay, I need to bring it into my practice. It's time. Otherwise, I am wasting my time looking at stuff purely as someone that enjoys looking.
Yes.
But unless I can bring it into my work, I'm just sinking time into it without it kind of having an expression.
Why do you think it's taken so long almost?
I guess because as painters, you kind of can have limited concept of what you do, but I've also realized more and more with this show, actually I can do anything. Like,
yes,
if I'm gonna, even if I wanted to sing a song, I could do that.
absolutely.
And I'm not a singer, but instead I didn't sing it, but I've recorded the audio recording of the poem, and so while you're in the space, you can pick up the poem, you can go to the QR code, you can listen to it. You don't have to listen to it in the show, you can take it with you. So yeah, I think as an artist that there is this beauty of breaking down the parameters of what your limitations are, or self-perceived limitations. As an artist, you can do whatever you want, because you can work with people who have that skill set and bring that into your work and like work closely with them. You don't have to physically do everything yourself. It's funny because I enrolled in a jewellery making course at the start of, was it 2025? I don't know, whenever it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is way too fiddly. I just cannot be bothered filing everything. And I think for me, painting is great because you can keep making mistakes and painting over it. And that's what makes the ultimate painting, like ultimately makes it work, is all those layers of like making mistakes. You can't do that with jewellery.
Yes.
Also, you can't do it when you paint your nails.
That's so true.
I've tried. So, yeah, I think it's interesting because there was a moment where I wanted to be a fashion designer, but also quite limited. Like, I feel like being an artist is much more like open to bringing all my interests in together.
Our only limitations are self-imposed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want to circle back to those school teachers of yours. Do you remember what the biggest lesson was that they gave you?
There was this moment where I was painting my first ever posthumous portrait, but also the first large portrait I ever did, which was my grandmother, because she passed away when I was in year 11 with my dad's mum. She's such a beautiful soul, and I was doing a portrait of her based on a photograph. And my painting teacher, Bruce, said, okay, but the hair just looks like a pile of dog poop. And I was like, okay, got it. And so I took that lesson forward and never made hair look like a pile of shapes, but actually you have to work out how to catch the light, how to break it like areas into, so it's not just like pile of rocks or poop. Yeah, that was a good lesson.
It's a very important, honest, sharp critique, but no doubt delivered kindly.
Yeah,
and humorously.
That's exactly what he was like. Yeah. And I think that's what I also really appreciate about my working relationship and my friendship with Nadine is like, she just says it as it is, like completely honest. If you want a yes or no, you'll get it straight away, very quickly. Like, you know exactly what she thinks, and to have also her to come into the studio while we're working, and she was like amazing with feedback of like when things weren't working, when I needed to pivot, she'd be like, right, this, you got to do this differently or do this differently. And like, that was another beautiful thing about working collaboratively. Even though we were working just on the jewellery, it also brought her into the studio, although she wouldn't have otherwise because I was too busy, but she had to be there, and I was able to get feedback that was really honest and really so helpful.
On your paintings?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of trust.
Yeah.
A lot of trust.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I really learned that about her. Like, she will tell you really what she thinks and like how valuable that is. Yeah.
Who have been some of your biggest mentors?
Ooh, biggest mentors. Since university?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I had a family friend in my 20s, mid-20s to probably 30s, and he was like my art dad, and he was a father of a friend of mine and from an art background. So my parents didn't have an art background, and So he would, for 3 years, he gave me a new challenge every year. 1 year he said, oh, and I should say that at that time that I knew him, I was a photorealist painter and I was working in portraiture and the figure, and he was really keen for me not to box myself in and not just do what I was comfortable with. So he would say 1 year, I want you to paint an abstract painting this year. I'm like, what? And I remember like in 2010 doing my first abstract painting and just being like, this feels so weird. I don't know. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's like putting on a blonde wig when you've lived as a brunette your whole life. And you're like, does this even suit me? Do I look weird? How are people going to look at me? Like, but anyway, it's a whole...
And how was the result of the painting in the end?
I don't know. Like, I don't know where that painting is, but and I normally keep everything. I probably painted over it. But the next challenge was to do a landscape. And then the next following year was to do dry pastel. So the landscape one, I went to Rip and Lee and I did some plein air. I ended up then doing a body of work that was, I wanted to do something that was based on an opera, but it had to be an opera set in the landscape. So I chose Lakme, set it at Rip and Lee, superimposed the figures that I photographed in the studio onto the landscapes I painted for Rip and Lee. Didn't know until the guy wrote about the catalogue essay, he checked that Rip and Lee, the landscape was designed in 1880, the same year that the opera was written. No shit. Sorry, probably can't swear on the radio. But I had no idea. It was just completely intuitive. It was that the timing was crazy. But yeah, so I was creating the characters and there was all of this. So yeah, I was like also, casting for that for the male protagonist, and I was the female protagonist. I think in my practice, like often, I'm trying to put myself into like historical things, but
theatre and world building is so important.
Yeah, and then the dry pastels, I did a series that was the interior of the Chandigarh College of Art that was designed by Le Corbusier. I was really interested in his architecture, and I'd done a painting series before. No one really knows about this. It was before Instagram. It was before that I found these images in Vogue Living of Le Cabanon, which was his tiny holiday house in the south of France. And from after working from found images, I was like, oh, if I created Chandigarh, then I get to see a city that he designed. And when I went to the Government Art College, it was like, oh, wow. Like the colours, the walls, the architecture was like really cool. So I photographed it, got permission to photograph it, went home and did a series of pastel drawings and then based the oil paintings from the pastel drawings. So you've got this breakdown from the photograph through the mark making process. Yeah, that was like 2012. And then with the abstraction, that took a really long time. And as you can hear through all these other things, and I did like 3 shows of still lifes and 3 shows of interior spaces, and you start to build up a much broader lexicon of what you can put in your toolbox that then helps you to go more and more into abstraction. It was incremental. It didn't happen straight away. But it was interesting because after I won the Archibald, people probably expected my next show was going to be all figurative. And a few years after I won, I had my first show with Sullivan and Strumpf, and that was predominantly abstract. Surprise.
Surprise. Blasting open those boundaries, blasting open those boxes.
Thanks to the mentor I had. And then after, he got that going, but then I just carried on doing the same thing, like of just constantly pushing through what the box was. And, I remember people calling me a portrait painter. And of course I painted portraits, like always. But it used to felt very limited. Like I would be like, I'm not a portrait painter, I'm a painter. But they couldn't see it yet. But now I'm a painter. I do portraits and I do abstract and I do all these things, but it's all under the umbrella of painting.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what you do, as long as it works as a painting. Doesn't matter what you do.
And as long as there's painting involved in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask also about your memories of painting architecture as a subject and interior as a subject. Does a level of tension that you give when you paint and level of focus, did that give you then a different perspective on the architecture? In doing the work, did you take a different reading on the building?
Yeah, originally, before I painted Le Corbusier, I painted my friend's loft in St Kilda. So not high-end designer. It was very much a creative space that was inhabited by artists, and it was a loft that had not been developed yet.
Rare, very rare.
Right? So it was a little gem, before all of St Kilda got, developed. And what I was interested in was architecture being a psychological space that without having any human figure in your painting, it allows the viewer to enter that space as a dream space, really. And I know there's a lot of text being written about that kind of thing. But yeah, that's what I was really interested in, providing, and I suppose landscape has the same effect. And so, yeah, I'm very much thinking about offering a visual that is a creative, a psychic space for creativity and contemplation and regeneration. And I'm very much interested in that in my new show. I bring all these things and all these frameworks in, but ultimately I'm really wanting to create a space that is there for rejuvenation for the viewer, because that's what art has given me as well. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And what actually comes to mind in hearing your words and hearing this conversation is that theatre and performance is so closely related to the discipline of architecture. And not many listeners would know that, but architects are heavily involved in theatre set design.
Mm-hmm.
And including, particularly I came out of the School of RMIT architecture. So we had the late Professor Peter Corrigan, who did a lot of opera and theatre and set design.
Mm-hmm.
And in our education, we always had to go and experience theatre. We had to design theatre. We had to design costumes sometimes. And often students would even engage in method acting as architecture students.
Wow.
To immerse themselves in the world that we were creating and the narrative that we were engaging with and even the polemic that we wanted to push. How did the method acting for you in making this film, while you were still painting, how did that affect the work? Did you feel a connection there?
I mean, my work is always performative, whether it's film or still. For me, I'm really, I suppose, as a model, aware of, you have built up an awareness like a model would. And then with the film, it's funny because I wanted it to be comic, but actually the comic moments happened where it was not planned. I was not acting. Things just happened.
Spotted some of those in the film. They do come out.
They're the funniest things. And it was when I was weaving, it was I got a knot I had to untie a whole knot that I got in the thread. And so I'm sitting there untying a knot. And then when I was at the beach eating grapes, you think that's very elegant. And then I dropped. I wasn't even going to put the grapes in. I just brought them as a snack for the day of filming because it was summer and I need snacks. We're going to be filming for a few hours. And then we're we should put that in the shoot, not just because I had seeds, pumpkin seeds as well, sunflower seeds, whatever. And I dropped the grapes in the sand and I'm devastated. And that's in the film. And it's really funny. And I didn't plan that at all. And then, should I give away all the moments?
Oh, please do.
Okay. So the way I visually addressed the romantic connection between Odysseus and Circe was actually by just showing her lying in the plants on her tummy and he signs his name on her butt.
And then that signature is in your painting.
So I just I've got a painting of me. He's not in it. I couldn't kind of get the composition to work with the other characters really. But yeah, you've just got his signature. And while there's a moment where I'm my eyes are closed, I'm just relaxing in the plants. And then I wake up and I'm what? Hang on, what is that smell? And I start digging, I looking at the grass and I realize I'm basically lying next to dog poo. It was very funny. But we didn't, it looks like I planned all this, actually just was fortuitous.
It's leaving space for that possibility in the creative process, isn't it? You can't plan anything, everything, but you have to work with what emerges and react creatively to it.
Yeah, and I remember early on having a chat over coffee with someone about what I was planning, and she was like, do you need a director? I'm like, no. I do not want a director telling me what to do while I'm filming. It's just going to come naturally. Of course, I'd never really done this before. But I had this really like strong sense of I don't want someone else's vision forcing it to happen.
Yes.
It's just going to happen. And it did.
Well, you did your own creative directing.
Yeah.
And there's no need to be limited by labels of just a painter.
No, and I'm really clear of what shots I need, of what the setup is, but you really have to trust your filmmaker to have the same eye and sensibility, and she does, and it was really a wonderful collab. And
the collectors who purchase the film, they get the whole film roll on Super 8, or it's a...
No, they get the digital. So, and I have sold the film I've sold my first film.
Congratulations.
It's an edition of 5, and I just found out that the first one has been bought by a wonderful collector in Melbourne, and it is going to be on 2 USBs, the film, one to play, one as the archive USB, and it will be in a container that houses it. I think it'll be in brass. I've still got to make the container. So, yes.
Magnificent. Congratulations to all the lucky collectors. It is such a beautiful show.
Thank you.
Such a beautiful creative universe as well. And the gallery itself at Sullivan Strump is there, this old warehouse that's gorgeous and white and full of air and full of light. And combined with your show, you come in and it's just this breath of freshness.
Such a beautiful space. I remember when I started to work with them, they were just in Sydney and Singapore. So, of course, I thought every show will be in Sydney. And then, like, a year later, they're like, oh, we have a surprise. We're opening in Melbourne. I'm like, what? Because I live in Melbourne. I know a lot of people think I live in Sydney, but I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I get to have more friends and family at my openings and alternate between the cities, like, each year. So it's a beautiful space. And I actually was getting, with the lined ceiling, it's like, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's lined. I was totally getting beach house vibes so I love that it's a beach theme.
Certainly, absolutely connects to your show in that way. Quickly tell us about Hong Kong. How was it to be in such a mega city and show at Art Basel? And what are your impressions of the Asian metropolis?
Oh my gosh, it was my first time in Hong Kong, and I was like amazed I didn't go everywhere. I just had a few days there. So I loved how safe I felt walking around at night and during the day, and just, really comfortable just being in there. But I also felt like, oh, I don't think I could live here because I need a lot more personal space. Art Basel was huge and amazing to, be shown in that context. Very different body of work that I created for that, which is a whole other story we probably don't have time for. But it was kind of like one of these peak moments, but then you're like, it's like a lot. It's very exciting and all of that, but then sometimes it's more exciting just being at home in your studio because you don't know all these people. Like, it's just crowds of people. It's huge. So yeah, it's kind of a lot to digest, but but anyway, I don't know, like, it's kind of hard to put into words, like, the experience, but you get to look at a lot of work from all over the world and to see your work in amongst it and how it sits. So, and I felt good about my show. So that was,
Huge congratulations on that showing yet again. No doubt you're not yet thinking about what's next, or perhaps you are. Can you give our listeners a scoop?
My next show will be later in Sydney next year. But I make, in between bodies of work, I have things on the go already in the studio that are transitional works, and the most joy is just playing that's letting anything come out where it doesn't have to be on theme with anything. Yes. Like, you can just do whatever you want and then just be free for a while like a kid.
Do you ever make works that are just for yourself? That is that special piece for you, maybe for a spot in your home or.
Yeah, there are a few pieces in my home that I haven't even shown. I've just made them and I kept them for sure. And I think it's important to have things that you just keep for yourself. But ultimately, to me, it's like what a successful work is that you are feeling that you're making it for yourself every time. And I think all the other external things of success is kind of like when you get back to it, you just want to feel like a kid making something in their bedroom. That for me is like the best that I will ever feel about something.
That's such a beautiful takeaway and really eternal advice. I wanted to ask, what is your advice to emerging artists? But that is such a brilliant point.
I think when you're young, you want all the external validation and all that. It's like, well, when you've ticked a lot of those boxes, ultimately you just want to get back to why you did it in the first place. It's not to please other people. It's not like, yes, sure, you factor those things in, of course, but ultimately you are the first person you want to be making happy. And I've worked so much harder than I ever expected. Like, the real grit of meeting deadline after deadline after deadline and bringing your absolute best every time. At the same time, you really have to make sure that there's a part of you that's just really enjoying as much as you can. It's not going to be all the time because it can be just hard and definitely painful at moments when you're like exhausted and you're like trying to meet a deadline. That's the reality of any business, whether it's creative or not. But it is a privilege when it is creative and that you do get to have these, like coming back to why you did it in the first place is so important.
Huge. Remember the why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even when you talk about your work, this is what we say to students and students of architecture and graduates who are presenting and trying to sell their work, sell their project. You have to have a good why. Why is that design important? Why have you done this? Why is this idea important?
Yeah, and also like I do think a lot about the audience and what is it that I want to bring into the world. So sometimes it will begin with what is it that I need in my work? Like what are the things that I'm feeling and what can I give to myself? But usually that's beyond what I need and it will resonate with the audience and what they need. So for instance, with the Archibald work that's in this year, it's a self-portrait with my 2 cats. And at that time, I just needed these paintings. I did a series of cat paintings with my friends, and I needed to have this moment where it was the quiet domestic setting where it's just one human and one animal, because it's a very human thing of just that moment of like real connection, softness, tenderness, sense of calm. Like there's something so like calming to your nervous system about seeing an image like that. That's what I needed. And then I put that painting, it was actually hanging in my kitchen because it's my family portrait, me and my 2 cats. And then I was like, oh, actually I'll enter it in the Archibald. And I've had so much feedback from people who feel that sense, like as a figure, as an image, she's not looking at the viewer. It's very introspective. So it's really, instead of being a portrait like we think of with the Archibald, it's like, direct gaze and all of this kind of, showing like personality and ego and all that. It's actually just this moment of quiet. It's very sort of calming. There's a sense of luxury about it as well, but and timelessness, like it could be from another era. But I have people that say how they were brought to tears of just how calm and nurturing it felt to look at. Wow. And I think that's also from the texture. So I suppose it's to give people that space. I think in my 20s I was much more like letting my angst out in my work. But now at this point in my practice, I'm like, no, what do I want to hang on my wall, and what will it give to other people as well? And I think in a world where we are constantly looking at images, and Instagram has changed as a medium from sharing things that we love to sharing things that are horrific.
Yeah.
And we're being bombarded by images of violence and stress and news constantly. Yes. Well, most of us are wanting to know what's happening. So we're following that stuff.
We're feeding the machine. Yeah.
And I think now for me, it's like, no, I want to create images that are gentle. I want to create a gentler world for children, but for everyone's like psyche, just to kind of have a image that is a painting that's a longer form that you can take your time in front of, slow your nervous system down and drop into a calmer state. And I think from that, everyone's going to be a bit better off.
Yeah, I love that. Such a beautiful approach. And again, that lesson, if you do something personal for yourself, a personal story, or personally something that you need, it just springs out and becomes so universal.
Yeah, and it's like finding what is it the antidote to what you're feeling, and how do you find that antidote? So I think that's really what drives my work. And in a way, like, that is just as political as making a political comment. It's the antidote to politics.
Totally.
So,
and perhaps it's that vehicle to transcendence, and it'll last longer than the politics and the news cycle.
Right.
And art and painting and investing in oil painting, it's about timelessness.
Right, and using a myth that is also outside of the current state of the world. It's like you're tapping into a time that is really disconnected from all the current things, which is still unfolding and shifting, and who knows where we'll end up. But
the longer and older human canon, and again, Shakespeare was right, all the world's a stage.
Yes.
And we're all really players. Well, I'm mindful of the time, so I'll ask my last question.
Yes.
And that's, what gives you hope?
So I think what I'm really learning more and more is that not to look externally at the situation for hope, not to rely on anything external. Hope comes from building through the small, through the big ways, a mindset that is built in a certainty that is beyond logic. Because I don't think we can rely on anything external for hope.
Wow.
I think it's built through building your mindset to make a lens that sees differently. And then I think you start to make more miracles. I mean, I think humans have this incredible ability to create good, to create miracles, to create beauty, to create art, to create so much. We are like vessels for so much good. And so I think it's about totally consciously building a mindset to create even more good.
Wow. I love that. That's such a beautiful take. Thank you so much, Yvette, for joining me in the program. Such an honour and a privilege to have this conversation.
It's so lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for another evening of radio architecture with Ilana Razbash. This live show was broadcast and recorded in the Radio Karim studio on Bunurong Country. You can replay this show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and supporting community radio. Take care.
Hi, this is Naomi Libba, composer and vocalist. I'm here at Radio Karim. They rock.